they would probably kill you too. And that's the reality
Good luck with
of your existence
good luck with
as
your
a government
buddies
stooge.
on your show. Good luck with your ethno-supremacist
I can
buddies on
express
your show.
myself freely and honestly.
Oh,
You have to lie.
sure.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Clear Record, where we slow it down, find the detail that changes everything, and make sure the record is actually clear. Now, this latest Marandi versus Piers Morgan exchange, it got heated in a way their previous appearances simply did not. And the reason why matters, because Piers spent the majority of this interview asking Marandi to criticize his own government, while bombs were literally falling on his country. He asked whether Iran has comedy shows that mock its leaders. He pulled out Human Rights Watch reports. He kept circling back to the same pressure test over and over again. And through all of it, he walked right past the single most damaging detail in the entire conversation. Trump admitted he tried to send weapons to the Iranian protesters. That is not a minor footnote. That is the whole story. Because the moment your government is arming the protesters, the argument that those protesters were peaceful collapses entirely. Piers walked straight into that, and he never recovered. Hit that subscribe button, drop a thumbs up, and let's get into it. Because on Clear Record, we do not let the headline bury the actual story.
Professor Mohammad Marandi is a self-described independent academic who nonetheless traveled with the Iranian delegation to the previous talks in Islamabad, and he joins me now from Tehran. Professor Marandi, welcome back to Uncensored.
Thank you very much for having me.
So where are we here? The President of the United States on Friday was pretty much bringing things to a conclusion. He felt that Iran had agreed to most of the terms laid down, particularly giving up enriched uranium and so on, and reopening the Strait of Hormuz. But as we sit here now for this conversation, it appears that they're not even going to turn up at the peace talks. What is your understanding on that, first of all?
Well, everything that he said was fake. The Iranians agreed to nothing. And he just puts out information on Truth Social, and later on he's possibly going to say that the Iranians promised everything and now they're not doing it, and so we'll have to bomb Iran. And then people like yourself and others in the Western media will continue to demonize Iran and to attack anyone who defends Iran, and we'll have another war.
How long can Iran sustain more warfare, and in particular economic warfare involving the Strait of Hormuz? I mean, if Iran can't get its energy out whilst also depriving other people of theirs, how long can it economically sustain that kind of thing?
Well, we do have to remember, because Western media doesn't put it this way, but the United States and the Israeli regime started this war. It was completely unprovoked. And 300, 400 Iranians were murdered in this round. And this is not even the first war. This is the second war that they waged on us in less than, in less than a year. So if the Strait of Hormuz is closed, it's because, first of all, it was never fully closed. The Iranians closed it to a lot of the shipping by countries that were hosting US bases. And I think if you were in Iran's place, you did the same. Those countries in the Persian Gulf that assisted the United States in waging war against the people, in Kuwait, the Emirates, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and Bahrain, without them, the United States and Trump could not wage the war. So their shipping obviously is not going to have priority. But the strait wasn't fully closed. The Iraqis were able to use it. The Iranians used it. The Chinese used it. Others who weren't waging war against Iran were using it. But we had a ceasefire after Trump at the beginning of the war said that Iran must surrender, unconditional surrender. And of course, that didn't happen. And then ultimately, after almost 40 days, the United States accepted the Iranian 10-point plan as the framework for discussion. And of course, Trump didn't do it in practice because he's dishonest, and so is the Trump regime. After that, we had a ceasefire. In that ceasefire, Iran was supposed to open up the Strait of Hormuz to ship to more ships, including those countries that host bases. But the Israeli regime was supposed to adhere to the ceasefire, and they didn't. And so for 10 days, Iran did not open the Strait of Hormuz to extra ships because Netanyahu was busy slaughtering people. And then when finally he was forced to accept the ceasefire, Iran said they're going to open up the strait for extra shipping. And then Trump said, but he's going to keep the siege on Iranian ports. Well, that's a violation of the deal too. So if he's going to impose a siege, the Iranians are not going to open up the strait. So from day one, when the United States carried out this aggression to the ceasefire and after the ceasefire, this crisis belongs to Trump and Netanyahu.
So what happens next?
Well, ultimately, Trump is going to have to recognize that he is not going to get at the negotiating table what he could not get on the battlefield. He lost the war. The Iranian people were able to stand up a joint war where the Trump regime, the Netanyahu regime, and a coalition or proxies in the region along with them were assisting them, and they failed. So why should Iran submit to the United States? If the United States wants a peace agreement with Iran, then it has to be a balanced agreement. But if Trump thinks that he can impose his will like an emperor and an imperial power, well, the revolution 47 years ago put an end to that. That's what the revolution was about. And that's what the Iranians are going to continue to do. They're going to preserve their dignity and sovereignty. That's something that the United States, especially under Trump, is not used to seeing. But Iran is different from other countries.
We had a bizarre situation last week where the Iranian president issued a statement supporting the Catholic Pope Leo over attacks made against him by President Trump. And he said he condemned the insult to Your Excellency over the desecration of Jesus, the prophet of peace and brotherhood, is not acceptable to any free person. I wish you glory by Allah. Many people were taken aback by this because in the World Report of 2026, Iran Human Rights Watch specified that Christians, along with other religious minorities, face systemic discrimination in law and practice in Iran, and noted a significant wave of arrests targeting Christian communities following regional conflicts in mid-2025, often based on unfounded accusations of connection with Israel. So people are struggling to see why your president would be quite so vocal in his support of Catholics, given that backdrop.
Well, I think it was clear that you would find some way to support aggression and to demonize Iran because that's what you do. And of course, that's fake. We have many churches in Iran. You refuse to travel to Iran. I propose to you to come to the country. You could go visit the churches and you could go.
Well, you've refused to travel to London. Come to London, no problem. I'll see you in London.
Well, right now they're busy bombing us. They're busy destroying our country and murdering our people. And I prefer to stay in Tehran under airstrikes to stand up for my people. And I've been to your country before, but you've never been here. I've been proposed that you read a book, Going to Tehran by Flint and Hillary Leverett, to learn a thing or two about Iran, but I'm pretty sure you didn't bother to buy it. But in any case, the Christian, the Christian community in Iran is doing very well. They have MPs in parliament. And unlike Christians in Lebanon, whose churches are being destroyed by the Israeli regime, and unlike the synagogue in Tehran, which was bombed by the Israeli regime, all Iranian churches and all Iranian synagogues are well protected by the people of Iran. You don't want to say that, you don't want to believe that, because it goes against that narrative that you've built in your mind, and that actually it's the Iranians that are the good guys. They're the ones who are the anti-genocide people, and your governments are the pro-genocide people. It's been like that for the whole.
Well, yeah, the
47 years.
reality is you always like to make this ad hominem as fast as you possibly can, and you prop up and defend a regime that has for 47 years oppressed its people and been a provider of funds and arms to a number of terror groups, including Hamas, Hezbollah and the Houthis. So whilst I'll take moral lectures from some people, you wouldn't be top of my list for the morality lecture, Professor. So try and avoid the ad hominem all the time, because it slightly devalues your information, which I do find useful, about the Iranian perspective on what is happening with this war right now. And just to be clear about what I said about Christians, I was quoting this from the Human Rights Watch in its World Report. It wasn't my view, wasn't my information, wasn't my investigative work. It was the Human Rights Watch. You might have a problem with that. You might say that it's all untrue, but I'm quoting a reputable organization who say that your regime has been oppressing Christians. You say otherwise. People can make their own minds up. I can only assume that if there were substantive peace talks that are about to happen imminently, you might be involved in a delegation. Am I right to assume that?
Well, first I have to respond. I don't really want to lecture you because I don't think you're the sort of person who would ever change. You're so narrow-minded that you refuse to set foot in Iran. And I'm sure you haven't read the book that I offered you to read. It wasn't written by an Iranian or someone on the Iranian payroll. It was written by two Americans, one of whom is Jewish. But in any case, of course I don't accept Human Rights Watch. Go and look at where the funding comes from. Iranian people know and respect the Christian community here. If you go to any church in Tehran, if you go to any synagogue in Tehran, you see that there are no police officers there. Why? Because no one will ever think about threatening the Christian and Jewish community in Iran. But that same Jewish community is bombed by Israel. Their synagogue is destroyed by Israel. I haven't seen Human Rights Watch condemn that. And it's because they're anti-Zionists. And the Christian community, by the way, had martyrs in this war because of the bombing. And in Lebanon, they've murdered Christians. And I'm pretty sure Human Rights Watch is not too troubled about the carpet bombing in Beirut, but we'll leave it at that. But yes, I may go with the delegation. They have not asked me to go. If they do go, right now the Iranians have not decided to go to Pakistan, to Islamabad, because of the behavior of Trump and the Trump regime.
So we have a situation here where YouTube has terminated the channel belonging to Explosive Media, the pro-Tehran group that got quite infamous for its Lego-themed animations mocking President Trump and the US war effort. Let's take a look at some of their stuff to remind viewers.
I don't understand why you let the people down and make them feel so grand. Yo. Secrets leaking, pressure rising, your fake savior era Iranian. Yo, you posted yourself as Jesus, crown on your head, healing the sick. Nah, you dropping bombs.
So the Iranian government's explicitly framed the ban as a violation of free expression, claiming the move was a deliberate attempt to suppress the truth and shield the American administration's false narrative from competing voices. And as some people have pointed out, that's pretty rich coming from a regime that controls the press and kills protesters, and in your case, for example, makes you so supine to them that you dare not express any criticism of your government whatsoever, do you? You don't, because
yes,
I've invited you to, and you can't do it.
Oh, yes, I live in fear of the government. Absolutely. And I'm supposed to, when I'm on your show for like 10 minutes and then you're attacking Iran throughout and saying all sorts of nonsense, I'm supposed to sing along with you? No, of course not. And by the way, my Instagram account was deleted. My Facebook account was deleted. And so was many of my colleagues and students. All of the Iranian media is sanctioned. Everything, government, semi-government, privately owned, that are major media outlets in Iran, they're all sanctioned. So, and it's not just Iran, Lebanese, Yemeni, Iraqi, any media outlet that doesn't mimic the Western narrative, or at least try to live alongside it without much criticism, it's banned. And that's why people in the West can't hear anything from Iran. However, in Iran, all you have to do is turn on the TV, and you have hundreds of Persian language media outlets funded by Western governments that are beaming into our homes day and night.
Okay, can you, out of interest, can you name me a high-profile comedy show in Iran that mocks the government in the same way that you have in America and the UK?
I don't know. There are different programs. I haven't watched television for years. I only watch the news maybe 3 or 4 times a week.
I'm only
on
after
Iranian
one.
television. But you can right now, people can search, and underneath the comment section, people can put links to them. But by the way, many of them are banned on YouTube. I myself have many interviews on RT that have all disappeared. My interviews on Press TV, they've all disappeared. They're gone forever.
Well, the reason for that, I presume, is because you're perceived to... Well, the reason for that is you're perceived... Well, hang on. You're perceived to be a propagandist for the Iranian regime, okay?
Oh,
and
okay.
I think I asked you last time, the best way to test this is I can be very critical, as I have been this morning on social media, about my government and my Prime Minister. I've demanded that he resign, right? I've done the same about President Trump when I disagree with him. But could you right now, speaking from Tehran on this show, can you think of one critical thing you would level at your leadership in Iran? Just give me one criticism of them.
Everything, every day. If you just come to... I invited you to come to Iran. Press TV...
Well, give me one now.
Okay, I'll tell you. Press TV has said they'll broadcast live a debate between you and me for hours. Live
that
in
wasn't
Tehran.
my question. That wasn't my question.
Well, then
question
you can
was,
come to Tehran.
give me one to prove that you do not live in a place which suppresses freedom of speech. I'm just asking you, as a critically minded professor who presumably likes to, explore all possibilities of thought and process.
Presumably.
Give me one criticism. Give me one criticism of your current regime, your current leadership. Give me one. One thing you don't agree with about them.
The government in Iran has problems with inflation. It has problems with crime. It has problems with jobs. It has problems with inflation. It has all sorts of problems. But my government does not help the Israeli regime carry out genocide. And you have never said that you do not accept ethno-supremacism. Because if you say you don't, that means you do not accept the legitimacy of the Israeli regime. Do you accept?
You have never accepted.
Do you accept?
You have never
I do not
accepted.
accept.
Hang on.
Tell me, do you reject ethno-supremacism? Do you believe that a regime that is based on ethno-supremacism is illegitimate or not?
Well, I don't exactly know what you mean. What do you mean?
Is a regime that is based on the concept of ethno-supremacism, is it legitimate or not?
Well, what I would repeat to you is what I've repeated to people about Israel for the last year. The Israeli government, not the people of Israel or the country, but its current government under Bibi Netanyahu has been doing a lot of things which I strongly disagree with. Yeah.
Do you reject a regime that accepts, that carries out a regime, not an administration, not a government, a regime that is based on ethno-supremacism?
Well, I literally last week...
That is why Hezbollah died.
Let me answer.
That's why people in Hezbollah died for the people of Gaza.
Fine. If you let me answer, only last week I attacked the Israeli government and Ben-Gvir in particular for the way they brought in a new law which would only kill Palestinians who they deemed terrorists, execute them with the death penalty, but not Israelis. Right? I thought that was outrageous and appalling and probably an example of what you're talking about.
You know, if you were talking about apartheid South Africa like this, or if anyone was, you would be attacking them. If anyone had given me the same answer when I said you accept
I have attacked
that's based on racial superiority, or on racial preferences or hierarchy, you would have been totally aggressive and rejected it outright.
I've literally just told you. You didn't obviously watch it.
You didn't.
You obviously didn't watch it. I've literally just told you. I've literally just told you that last week I did exactly that.
About a law. That's a law. I'm talking about the regime itself. That law is only brought about because of the nature of the regime. That's why people rape others, Palestinians in prison, and they're treated as heroes.
And what about your regime?
That's why.
What about your regime?
My lovely
what about
regime
your
doesn't do that.
regime
No, my
of
regime doesn't do
theocratic
that.
fascists
So
who murder thousands
okay,
of protesters for protesting against them? What about that?
I know. Okay, let me go. First of all, you're hiding the fact that you could not answer this question by saying this. However, I'm glad you raised this. This nonsense was all created in order to justify this war. Trump himself, just a couple of weeks ago, said that he sent weapons to the so-called protesters. How is it possible, if those protests were organic and they were spontaneous, that they needed weapons? How did he know who they were? How
many protesters did your regime kill?
How did he know?
How many did you kill?
How did he know that they even used weapons, that they could use weapons? It was because
how many of your protesters did your regime kill?
Because he was afraid. You're afraid to accept the fact that he knew, and his intelligence agency knew,
Answer my simple question.
Intelligence agency knew that these were not
how many thousands of protesters? How many thousands of protesters did your regime slaughter in January?
No peaceful protesters. No peaceful protesters were slaughtered by the police. In fact, the first 2 days.
What a disgusting lie.
You are the disgusting person who supports ethno-supremacism.
This is why people call you a stooge and propagandist for the regime.
Exactly. You're the
here.
stooge for the Zionist regime.
We did nothing wrong. No peaceful protesters got killed.
No,
and
I didn't say that.
As you say it.
No, you're fabricating. I said they did not massacre peaceful protesters. The people that your government supported and gave weapons to, they carried out an armed insurrection. 3,117 people were killed, including hundreds of police officers and a couple of thousand innocent bystanders by people that your government armed. Your governments armed these people. Your governments murdered them. But you want to distract attention away from your own crimes, just like you're not willing to say anything about ethno-supremacism in Palestine.
Okay, we'll leave it there. The truth is, people can see through it, Professor Marandi.
I'm sure they will.
They know a government stooge and propagandist when they see and hear one. And let the record show that you have not given any specific. You've given.
I'm in here in Tehran under your bombs.
Let the record show that once again you have not leveled.
That when you were slandering Iran, I was in Tehran.
You've not leveled any criticism at your own regime. Once again, because you're not allowed to, because if you did start criticizing your regime on this show and it got picked up by the media, they would probably kill you too. And that's the reality of your existence.
Good luck with your ethno-supremacist buddies on your show. Good luck with your ethno-supremacist buddies on your show.
I can express myself freely and honestly. You have to lie. Sure. That's the difference.
Let us talk about what actually happened in that exchange, because this was one of the most revealing Marandi versus Piers Morgan debates we have seen yet. And what it revealed goes beyond this war. It exposes something consistent about how Western media structures these conversations, not to find the truth, but to steer toward a predetermined conclusion. So let us start where we have to start. The single most explosive moment in that entire interview. The one Piers had no answer for, and that should be the headline on every piece of coverage about this exchange. Trump admitted he sent weapons to the Iranian protesters. He said it himself. Now, think carefully about what that admission actually does to the Western narrative surrounding the January protests. The framework Western media built was this: peaceful Iranian civilians rose up organically against a regime they hated, and that regime massacred them. That framing only holds if the protests were spontaneous, civilian, unarmed, and independent. The moment the American president goes on record saying he was sending weapons to those protesters, the entire framework breaks down. You cannot hold both positions at the same time. Either the protesters were peaceful, unarmed civilians, in which case, why was Trump arming them? Or they were armed, in which case the Iranian government's description of events as an armed, foreign-backed insurrection is, at minimum, far more complicated than Western audiences were led to believe. Marandi seized on this immediately, and he was right to. How did Trump know who to arm? How did he know they could use weapons? How did he know where to fund them? These are not rhetorical flourishes. They are questions that point directly to the level of American intelligence coordination behind what was publicly framed as a spontaneous popular uprising. And Piers, who had been pressing Marandi relentlessly on Iranian government credibility, had no response. Because there is no response that keeps the peaceful protesters' narrative intact once the American president admits he was trying to arm them. Now, let us look at the criticism question, because Piers returned to it multiple times, and it deserves honest examination. On the surface, it sounds like a fair journalistic test. I criticize my own government, so you should criticize yours. It sounds like intellectual consistency. It sounds even-handed.
But the specific context makes it something else entirely. Marandi is sitting in Tehran. His country is being actively bombed. His colleagues' social media accounts have been deleted. Iranian media is sanctioned across Western platforms. The country is in the middle of an armed conflict with the most powerful military force on the planet. And Piers Morgan, sitting safely in a London studio, is asking Marandi to go on an international platform reaching millions of viewers and publicly criticize his government's conduct of its own national defense in real time while the war is still happening. That is not a test of free speech. That is a demand that someone publicly undermine their own country's negotiating position and national morale while it is under bombardment. The narrator puts it plainly. Asking Marandi to do that on Western television during an active war is the equivalent of asking a British academic in 1940 to appear on German radio and criticize Churchill. You can understand why someone would decline that without concluding for a single second that they are living in fear of their government. And here is the part that most viewers likely missed, because Piers moved past it so quickly. Marandi actually answered the question. He said his government has serious problems with inflation, with crime, with unemployment. That is a direct, substantive criticism of the Iranian government's domestic economic record. Piers dismissed it immediately and kept pushing for something more dramatic. But economic mismanagement is a real criticism. The fact that Piers would not accept it and kept demanding something sharper reveals what the question was actually about. It was never about whether Marandi could criticize his government. It was about whether Marandi would deliver the specific anti-regime content that fits the Western political narrative. When he refused to deliver that content and gave a genuine answer instead, Piers treated it as no answer at all. And that tells you exactly what the demand really was.